Frida Kahlo was one of the most influential artists of her lifetime. She was born in Coyoacán, Mexico on July 6, 1907. Her father was a photographer from Germany and immigrated to Mexico, and that is where he met Kahlo's mother, Matilda. Kahlo was a middle child as she had one younger sister and two older sisters. Unfortunately, at the very young age of 6, Kahlo contracted polio, which caused her to be bedridden for 9 months. She recovered from the polio, but it had long-term effects on her bone growth, as her right leg was extremely thinner than the left leg. She wore long skirts for the rest of her life to hide her limp. Frida Kahlo had a very close bond with her father, and he encouraged her to get involved with sports to help her recover faster from the polio. She ended up participating in swimming, she played soccer, and even wrestled. Frida Kahlo would go on and pursue her education at the National Preparatory School in the year 1922.
Frida Kahlo was considered one of Mexico's greatest artists who began painting mostly self-portraits after she was severely injured in a bus accident in 1925. After the accident, Frida became politically active and married fellow communist artist Diego Rivera in 1929. Frida's relationship with her husband was very unhealthy. Her husband had many affairs during their relationship, one of these affairs being with her sister. While she was never considered herself a realist, Kahlo befriended one of the primary figures in the artistic and literary movement, Andre Breton, in 1938. The same year, she had a major exhibition at a New York gallery, selling about 25 paintings shown there. In 1939, Kahlo went to Paris for some time. There, she exhibited some of her paintings and developed friendships with other artists such as Marcel Duchamp and Pablo Picasso. In 1953, Kahlo received her first solo exhibition in Mexico. After Kahlo's death, the feminist movement in the 1970s led to renewed interest in her life and work. Kahlo was viewed by many as an icon of female creativity.
On September 17, 1925, Kahlo was involved in a terrible bus accident. In this accident, she was left with many broken bones, multiple fractures, and she had to spend the rest of her days in a full body cast. Now, one can only imagine how terribly painful this was, both mentally and physically. She struggled with the pain of what happened in the accident and eventually turned her attention away from her studies in medicine. After turning away from her studies, she decided to begin a full-time painting career. Since she was stuck recovering from her accident, she would paint to occupy her time. During this time, she began self-portraits because she was the subject she knew best. She enjoyed painting so much that she asked Diego Rivera to judge whether her painting showed enough talent. Rivera was very impressed in her work, so she started to pursue a career as an artist.
Frida Kahlo, The Wounded Deer. For many artists painting their self-portrait, there is an inclusion of items in the portrait that either represents or symbolizes something outside of the portrait, or ideas and emotions that the artist wanted to include in the portrait. But for most artists, those symbols were in addition to the realistic, though probably idealized depiction of themselves. For Frida Kahlo, this was not always the case, and is perhaps what makes her portraits some of the most fascinating that exist today. In looking at Kahlo's portrait that she painted as a wedding gift for her dear friends, titled The Wounded Deer, it is helpful to know how she described the portrait herself. Kahlo said, "I leave you my portrait, so that you will have my presence all the days and nights that I am away from you." To Kahlo, this portrait not only depicted her physical person, but embodied her actual presence. Created in 1946 towards the end of her life, the almost 9-inch by 12-inch oil on masonite painting includes Kahlo's iconic facial expression, brows, and hair, but then excludes any other obviously recognizable attributes of the artist. Replacing her normal flowered and fabric-woven braids are the large antlers of a stag. Her body replaced by the deer's, and riddled with arrows. Although many critics describe the deer as standing, front leg lifted in motion, to me she appears to be lying down upon the forest floor, with her right leg supported by the root of a forest tree. Laying on the ground before Kahlo is a broken branch bearing the only leaves in the picture, while on her right and behind her are 9 trees mirroring the 9 arrows and 9 points of the antlers. The forest is subdued in color. The painting is done mostly in shades of brown, orange, and yellow, with a washed-out blue in the sky and water in the distance, and red around the entry points of the arrows as her blood. Finally, Kahlo's self-portrait is one of balance through juxtaposition and contrast, as in many of her paintings. The painting shows Kahlo as both her female self as well as the male stag, offsets war and peace with the arrows and what looks to be the olive branch, reveals harmony between the winter season dryness and stillness of the forest and the chaotic lightning and storm over the water. What presents could Kahlo have been hoping to gift to her friends through this painting? Perhaps it is her presence of being strong, at peace, and okay, despite the many and varied difficulties in her life. If this were the case, I believe she did so beautifully and perhaps even more expressively than most gifted portraits, even to this day.
The painter Frida Kahlo is remembered today for her personal struggles and her extraordinary life story. Her art is impactful on the world because rather than painting fictional people or fictional outdoor sceneries, she painted her reality. She illustrated her life story through her paintings, which were typically very vibrant, very explicit, very intimate, sometimes painful, which caused people to feel a deeper connection within themselves. She is most known for her self-portraits that I believe inspire society to appreciate other forms of beauty. Frida Kahlo definitely revolutionized the traditional beauty standards of the Western world. From my perspective, her disabilities and unibrow changed society's opinion of what beauty is supposed to be or what beauty should be. To this day, I think her art inspires all types of women all around the world to be confident who they are and proud to be who they are. Interestingly enough, I watched a YouTube video the other day of the Spanish songstress Rosalía. It was her song Apelé, and the first thing I noticed was that she was sporting the iconic unibrow that Frida Kahlo is commonly known for. To me, this just goes to show how much of an impact that Frida Kahlo and her paintings had on modern art and modern music.